All right, as everybody knows, there's been some big storms recently in California, the atmospheric rivers that seem to just be coming every single week over this entire winter. And that has led to a lot of negative impacts across the state. It's led to some widespread flooding. There's thousands of people in the city of Pajaro right now that aren't able to go back to their homes. There's still thousands of people without power from the last storm that came through. And we've been talking a lot about the negative impacts of atmospheric rivers, but atmospheric rivers are also very beneficial. And California actually, or most likely, wouldn't be able to exist without them because about 30 to 50% of our yearly water comes from just a few of those big storms. So throughout this video, I just wanted to focus on the California water update, which is going to be an inherently positive video because there's lots of good news. The drought monitor was updated today, so we're going to check out some of the updates. We're going to look at percentage of rainfall compared to normal to understand why there's been such an improvement in the drought monitor. We're going to check out the reservoir levels. We're going to look at some of the season snow totals and compare them to history. And little sneak peek there's some potentially all-time record-breaking snow totals. So we're going to look at that. And then there's also more storms on the way. So we're going to check out the forecast, see how much rain, snow we can expect with the next big storm coming in, and then look at the long-range forecast to see how long winter is going to continue to go on for. So just breaking down the reason I wanted to do this video. It's been a lot of negative coverage this week because we've had such big impacts with a lot of these atmospheric rivers that have come through, but we've also had positive impacts. So this is the current drought monitor right now, and I wanted to start out with this because it has a good breakdown of the different color categories. So white is no drought category whatsoever. The yellow is abnormally dry, so not technically a drought category, but abnormally dry. Tannish color or light orange is your moderate drought. Orange is your severe drought. Extreme drought is red, and exceptional drought is burgundy. So, and then it says the percentages here. So right off the bat, you can see across the state of California, 0% in exceptional drought, 0% in extreme drought, 9% in severe drought, 36% in moderate drought, 55% abnormally dry, which is a huge improvement from last week. Last week, 19% of the state was in severe drought. Now, if we look at current, it's down to 9%. And then if we look at last month, 33% of the state was in severe drought. And then comparing it again to current, 9%. And you can see where a lot of the improvements have been. It really seems like it's been over the entire state. So just looking at even longer out than that, if we want to compare this with 1 year ago, we can see that a year ago, 35% of the state was in extreme drought, so the bright red category, and now 0% of the state is in that bright red extreme drought category. And then also if we want to do 1 year ago and look at severe drought, so the orange category, 93% of the state was in severe drought. Now that's down to 9%. And if you look at where that 9% is, it's in the very top right of the state and the very, you could say, southeastern portions of the state. Actually all of central California is out of the drought at this point. So huge improvements there. And if we want to see the change in the last week, this is the drought change monitor. You could call it that for 1 week. And then these different colors would show you whether your drought is getting worse, if this map was showing orange or brown or any colors like that. And then it's getting better if it shows green to blue. So light green is a 1-class improvement. What that means is, if we go back to our categories, a 1-class improvement would be if an area went from severe drought to moderate drought. That's a 1-class improvement. A 2-class improvement would be extreme drought to moderate drought. So when we look at this map here, much of Northern California is in that 1-class improvement. And if we look at where they are right now, so current, it looks like we took what was a lot of severe drought, especially up in Northern California, and we turned that into moderate drought. And again, only 36% of the state still in that moderate drought category. So over 1 week, a lot of our improvements were up in Northern California. And the reason we didn't have any change throughout much of Central California is because there was nothing to change. We'd already improved as much as we could, and we were already out of the drought. So you can't get better than that. And then I noticed also in the Santa Cruz Mountains, we went from abnormally dry to nothing. So great to see that right there. And the reason for that, so that's the 1 week comparison. Comparing where we were last week with where we are this week. The drought monitor changes every Thursday. And this is our percent of average precipitation last week. So where you're red to yellow, that's where you picked up less rain than you expected or than you would see in an average year. And then green to purple is where you picked up more rain than you would expect. And then where you get into the purples, that's where you're picking up 200 to even 400% of the rain that you would normally get at this point in the year. So we look at the state of California. Let's just ignore the bottom right corner here for a second. And last week, almost the entire state of California picked up 200 to 400% of the rain that we normally get. So it makes sense that when we look at the drought change, we had a major change in just 1 week. Usually it takes a while to see an actual improvement in the drought monitor. It's usually very slow moving, and to see almost all of Northern California do a 1-class improvement, well, it would take rainfall like this, and that is exactly what we got. But again, there's two sides to the coin. Because we picked up so much rainfall so fast, we did have some pretty bad flooding. A levee broke in Pajaro, and that's what flooded the community there. Highway 1 was shut down. My commute has been 3 times as long as normal, but that's the least of the problems of what we've been dealing with, and especially along the Central Coast where a lot of this heavy rain and gusty winds has been focused, I'll put it that way. All right, so that's the 1 week. Now let's look at 3 months. So this is our drought change over a 3-month period. So it's still those same degradations or improvements that we were talking about in the last map, but now you can see where we've had huge improvements over a 3-month span. You see much of Central California is in the 4-class improvement to 5-class improvement. So just to remind you what that means, if we come back to our categories here, a 5-class improvement is going from exceptional drought to extreme would be 1, to severe would be 2, to moderate would be 3, to abnormally dry would to be 4, and then to nothing would be a 5-class improvement. So in these portions of California where you see that blue, the light blue is a 4-class, and then the dark blue is a 5-class. So that means 3 months ago, we had exceptional drought in some parts of Central California, and now there is no drought whatsoever. And then if we want to explain why that happened, we can look at percent of average precipitation since the beginning of the season. So this is when you start your rainfall year, which is October 1st to, that's yesterday, so pretty much the current day. If we look at the overall state, one thing I noticed, very bottom right, has seen less rainfall than we normally get in a year. That would explain why when we look at that part of the state, there is still some moderate to severe drought going on down there. But if you look at the center of the state, we have picked up 150 to 200% of our average precipitation across this wide period right there. So when you match that up with the current drought monitor, it makes sense why that drought has just completely disappeared throughout the center of the state. That's where a lot of these atmospheric rivers have been funneling all of their moisture. Now, I know sometimes I hesitate to show this because it's a lot of numbers to show in a YouTube video, but I do just want to break down a few of our big cities and ignore most of the numbers that we're looking at here. That shows what city we're looking at. This column shows how much rain you've actually picked up. So San Francisco has picked up 28 inches of rain since October 1st. So we're basically just looking at the data behind this map right here, the rainfall totals throughout the entire season. So San Francisco has picked up 28 inches. They normally would get 18 inches, so they have 150% of their normal rainfall. And I put the link in the description to this if you want to break down all the different cities. So just another example, let's look at a good one here. Bishop. They've picked up 13 inches of rain. They normally get 3.5, so they've had 359% of their average rainfall. It looks like Paso Robles, 185, Santa Maria, 197, and then down into Southern California, Los Angeles usually gets 24 inches. Oh no, they usually get 12 inches. This year they've picked up 24 inches. So they've picked up twice as much rain as they normally get. So 200% of their average. So not a big surprise there, but we've picked up much more rain than we normally see in a year. So we've had huge improvements with the drought monitor. And I think the key one I want to point out is that 3 months ago, 90% of the state was in severe drought. So 3 months ago, 80% of the state was in severe drought. Now that is down to 9% where you see that orange color. So great to see that right there. And it looks like we're going to have more improvements in the next few weeks because we're going to remain in a very wet pattern, although that's for the end of the video. We'll get there in a second. First, I just want to look at some of the reservoir levels. This is looking at percent of normal for our major reservoirs. And it's kind of small, so I'll zoom in here. But you can see a lot of these numbers are above 100%. So that means, and that one's even 284%. That is success dam, and I would say it's a success right now. We have a lot of water in it. So backing up here, let's just click on another one. This is Folsom Reservoir. That's at 93% of normal. I think there's some big ones up here. Yeah, that's what we want. This is Whiskey Town Reservoir. That's 104%. This is the one I'm looking for. Shasta Dam is 86% of normal. So that can be kind of abstract. So let's just look at percent capacity. Looks like Shasta is at 69%. Whiskey Town Reservoir is at 91%. But then when we look at a lot of these other ones, we're now, for the most part, above 75, 80%. Kind of generalizing across the board there, but that's a lot better than we looked at the beginning of the season. And you have to remember that they can't fill it up all the way to the top when there's more storms on the way, because then it would just immediately lead to flooding. So it's this little game that we have to play, where I think before the last atmospheric river, they actually had to let some water out of the reservoirs, because with all the rain that was coming in, and we did see a lot of rain come in, that it would have led to widespread flooding. So it's this little dance that we have to play with the reservoirs, where you want to end the rainy season at 100%, but you also don't want them to overflow when there's more storms coming in. So that's something we'll continue to look at, but overall looking great when it comes to our water supply. Now, when it comes to season snow totals, I think this is where some of the best news comes in. So the first thing I want to point out is Sierra Tahoe's annual average snowfall total is 400 inches. And if we look at these two numbers right here, so this is the snowfall totals for 7,300 feet, 433 inches, so that's above average already. And then above 8,500 feet, we've picked up over 600 inches of snow. And I don't know about you, but I can't do this math in my head. I want to see how many feet that is. So 625 inches divided by 12 inches. Is that right? That is 52 feet of snow? I'm going to do that. I'm going to check my math again. So 625 inches divided by 12 inches in a foot. Someone can check my math, but I believe that is 52 feet of snow in one season. That is incredible. So just looking at this, you can see that we've we've already picked up more snow than any of these other previous years that we can look at. And we also have more snow to come. So the year that comes the closest to 2022, so this far left column is I should break down what this chart's showing us before I get too excited. All right, so the far left column, or we'll start with the axes. The bottom, the x-axis, is our snowfall years. On the far right is 2014, and then it goes newer as you go to the left. So this far left column is our current year, 2022 and 2023. And then the y-axis is inches of snow. So right there you can see this snowfall season, over 600 inches of snow. And then if we look across the board, looks like 2020, not a great year. 2019, 2020, not a great year. Looks like the one year that competes with what we've seen this year was 2016, 2017. But what I'll point out is that this also includes the April snowfall totals. And we aren't in April yet, so we could add on another chunk on top of this. And the way winter's going, we most likely will be picking up some more snow by the time we get into April. Although doesn't look like we picked up much April snow the last couple of years. But we don't need it. We've already picked up a massive amount. Just breaking it down, we had 136 inches in December, 179 in January, 133 in February, and in March, we're already at 112, and we're only halfway through the month. So you might be thinking, okay, this is a good comparison over the last 5 to 7 years. I'm not going to count that. But how does this compare across all of recorded history? So this is where this chart comes in. I don't know if Daniel Swain put this chart together or if he just posted it to Twitter, but it's a perfect illustration of what's going on here. So once again, we're just going to break down what we're looking at here. So the x-axis is your months, and we're looking at California snow water content. So how much snow? That's a very sciencey way of saying snowpack. December to July. So you start picking up a lot of your snow in December, and then it starts melting as you get into July. And then the reason there's 3 charts is because the top one is North Sierra, the middle one is Central Sierra, and the bottom one is Southern Sierra. Now we're going to try to break apart some of these lines that we're looking at right here. So the blue shading, so not even looking at the lines, if you just look at the blue shading, that is your average year. And then these individual lines are different years. Some of the recent ones, and then your maximum one is in green. So I think you can ignore a lot of what's on here. Pay attention to the blue shading, that's your average. Pay attention to the green, that's the most in recorded history. And then pay attention to the blue, that's what we've picked up this year. So Northern Sierra looks like it is the second largest snowfall year ever, and we still have some storms to come, so we might be able to pass 1982. And then in Central Sierra, it looks like we have passed 1982. It is now the largest snowpack in recorded history. And then if we look at Southern Sierra, it's the largest snowpack in recorded history, and I would say by a long shot, too. And we are well above an average year, which is shown with the blue shading there. So again, comparing this year to the previous record is the blue line versus the green line. And especially in the Southern Sierra, that blue line is well above the green line. It is a record snowfall kind of year. Now, I've mentioned that we still have some to go. So let's look at the forecast just really quickly. I'm going to click through here. It looks like this weekend there is a little system coming through. You see that rain up mostly in Northern California. Looks very light. It's not an atmospheric river. It's actually the best way to pick up rain and snow. More moderate amounts spread out over a longer period of time than picking up a massive amount over a short period of time. That's what usually leads to flooding. So I think a lot of the rain and snow next week is going to be mostly beneficial. it does look like there's a little bit bigger of a storm coming in Monday and Tuesday. This is now looking at Monday and Tuesday. It looks like we are going to see pretty decent snowfall up into the Sierra as we get into, that was mostly on Monday. So most likely we'll have a winter storm warning popping up there. And then when we look at Monday, so this is now looking at Tuesday. That's where it does look like we pick up some heavier rainfall and heavier snowfall. So could be some impacts there because that's going to be falling on saturated soils. We're certainly going to keep an eye on that. It could lead to some more flooding, will most likely lead to some travel concerns up in the mountains where we're going to be picking up a large amount of snow. And I noticed heavy snowfall, especially for the southern Sierra, which already has a record snowpack. So we're going to keep our eye on that throughout this next week. And then it looks like the storms just continue after that. More rain and snow on the way. So let's just break down rainfall through the weekend. That's pretty much through the weekend. Mostly for Northern California, just a drizzle. Maybe a little more than a drizzle. But yeah, not much rain over the weekend. And then when we bring in the Monday, Tuesday storm, that's where few places look to pick up 1 to 2 inches, maybe 3 inches up in the higher elevations. So not a massive storm. Actually looks like Southern California is going to be seeing some of the heaviest rainfall with that. And then what we're also thinking about, snowfall, not much throughout the weekend, but then when we add on the Monday, Tuesday storm, let's go all the way out and see how much we still have to go. So this is all the way to March 26th. And I see a 47 right there. So I can actually do that math. It's close to 48. That would be 4 feet of snow still to come over the next 10 days up in the mountains. So we're just going to continue to add on to what is already a record snowpack. And the reason for that is when we look at the long-range forecast, so this is 6 to 10 day precipitation probability outlook. That's a very sciencey way of saying how much rain are we going to get in the long-range forecast. So 6 to 10 days out, it is an above average chance of rainfall and very dark green, which means we're confidently saying it's going to be wet. And then 8 to 14 days out, it's a light green, so it's a little less confidence that it's going to be above average rainfall. But it still looks like we have the wet pattern. And then throwing in temperatures there, 6 to 10 days out looks like it's quite cold, and then 8 to 14 days out, still cold. So the basic summary there is for the next 2 weeks, it looks like we're remaining in this cold, wet pattern. Or in other words, winter is going to continue. Now, as always, there's two sides to the coin that could lead to some more flooding, some more structure damage up in the Sierra, where I've seen a few photos of houses and even grocery stores with their roofs collapsed because there's just too much snowfall on there. But it's also led to some great and thoughts and prayers go out to everybody who's been negatively affected by any of these storms this season. But then there's also the other side of the coin and the fact that our drought monitor is looking amazing. Our rainfall totals and our reservoirs are looking great, and our snowpack is the highest that we have ever seen, especially in the southern Sierra. So, as with anything, there's a lot of nuance to these atmospheric rivers. There's certainly been some hazards, but there's also been some benefits. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll have more updates on California water, drought, rainfall totals, and snowpack throughout the rest of this winter. So, hope this video was helpful, and thanks for watching.